2025. The global trade scene is in turmoil. United States President Donald Trump is challenging the World Trade Order with the slogan, America First. By imposing steel and aluminum tariffs on the European Union, the Trump administration is shaking relations on both sides of the Atlantic.
President Trump today welcoming Ireland's Prime Minister Michael Martin to the White House as Trump's trade war heats up across the world.
The countermeasures we take today are strong but proportionate.
The European Union slapping the U.S. with tariffs of up to $28 billion on goods, including jeans, boats, bourbon, and motorcycles.
President Trump enacting sweeping new tariffs on steel and aluminum, 25%. Europeans are retaliating in
It's a horrible economy. He gave us horrible inflation, and I think the market was going to go very, very bad.
This move has created a historic rupture between long-standing allies. Europe, however, has not remained silent on this maneuver and has prepared a massive retaliatory package worth $1 billion. From motorcycles to chicken wings and even women's dressing gowns, the list was not only an economic response, but also a political chess move. In this video, we go behind the scenes of the European Union's retaliatory strategy, the Trump administration's harsh protectionist policies, and the long-term impact of these trade retaliations on the global economy. If you are ready, we are entering one of the most heated fronts of the global trade friction. United States President Donald Trump's administration imposed 25% and 10% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Europe under Section 232 for national security reasons. Trump's argument was simple. Domestic industry must be protected and the United States must close its trade deficit. For Europe, however, this explanation was not convincing. The European Union was one of the United States' strongest allies in North Atlantic Treaty Organization. How could it pose a national security risk? At this point, Jean-Claude Juncker, the president of the European Commission, lashed out in front of the cameras. We are allies. We are not enemies. But if we are attacked, we will not hesitate to respond. And indeed, the European Union has begun preparations to introduce retaliatory tariffs within a few weeks. But how is the European Union's counter-move shaping up? Which products were chosen and why? Let's get into the details. Following the Trump administration's decision to raise tariffs on steel and aluminum imports to 25%, the European Union said it would impose retaliatory tariffs worth $28 billion on United States industrial and agricultural products. At this point, the European Union has prepared a list of measures that will not only have an economic impact, but also directly target Trump's voter base. The new measures will target a wide range of American exports, including steel, aluminum, textiles, household appliances, and agricultural products. Perhaps one of the most prominent products on the European Union's retaliation list was American chicken wings and women's dressing gowns. These may seem like small sectors, but their political messages were big. Chicken wings are a critical export for the United States' southern states. These states were home to Trump's most loyal voter base. Women's robes are a small industry, but their psychological impact is huge. Hitting the textile industry was a direct hit on the American worker. The choice of these products was a symbolic retaliation by the European Union. In a trade war, it is not only economic losses, but also cultural and social pressures. However, if no negotiated agreement is reached, from April 1, the European Union will reimpose measures in response to $8 billion in United States tariffs, including on iconic American products such as Harley-Davidson motorcycles, bourbon, and jeans. And from mid-April, subject to the approval of European Union member states, it will impose further measures worth over $18 billion in new United States tariffs. And why these products? Because they were the most important exports of key states where Trump won votes. Harley-Davidson, for example, is made in Wisconsin, one of Trump's strongest support states. Bourbon whiskey is made in Kentucky, and Kentucky is Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's home state. The European Union strategy was clear. Turn economic pressure into political pressure. But did this tactic actually work? Or did Trump get tougher? In trade wars, diplomacy comes into play as much as economics. The European Union's countermove targeted not only American companies, but also Trump's political base. In Washington, however, these moves have been met with even tougher statements. The sides in the trade war were not only expanding their fronts with tariffs, but also with words. While Europe has launched retaliation plans, other countries have reacted differently to Trump's policies. Some went all in, others opted for a strategy of cautious retreat. In this moment of crisis, the words of the leaders further escalated the struggle on the ground. Let's take a look at the critical statements of the period. United States President Donald Trump made it clear that he has no intention of backing down in the trade war. Tariffs are about making America rich again and making America great again. And it is happening. There will be some discomfort, but we are fine with that. Nothing much will happen. The European Union, for its part, has made it clear that it will respond harshly. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen described the European Union tariffs as countermeasures responding to tariffs of the same value imposed by the United States. We will always remain open to negotiation, von der Leyen said in a statement. In a world full of geopolitical and economic uncertainties, we believe it is not in our common interest to impose tariffs on our economies. Some countries have taken a more balanced approach to preserve economic stability. Jonathan Reynolds, United Kingdom Minister for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, emphasized keeping diplomatic doors open. We will keep all options on the table and will not hesitate to respond in the national interest. We will continue to engage with Washington in the United Kingdom's business interests. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese took a constructive stance, avoiding direct retaliation. Tariffs and escalating trade tensions are a form of economic self-harm. That is why Australia will not impose reciprocal tariffs on the United States. Let's take a look at the global impact of Europe's economic sanctions and how this trade war is reverberating in other countries. Europe's harsh response to the trade tariffs imposed by the Donald Trump administration was not limited to the continent's borders. Canada and Mexico were also severely affected by the United States tariffs. Canada announced a $20 billion counter tariff. Canada's latest moves focus on steel and aluminum imports, but also apply to appliances, computers, sporting goods, and cast iron. Canada's Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc has said that the government could counter again if the Trump administration imposes more tariffs on steel and aluminum. Mexico has imposed heavy tariffs on American agricultural products. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said her government would wait until April 2 to decide whether to impose reciprocal tariffs on United States goods, but assured the Mexican people that her government has a plan. On top of that, China has also stepped in. China was already locked in a trade war with the Trump administration, and the wave of retaliation from Europe has given China more room to maneuver. This once again demonstrated the impact of Europe's economic power on global trade. As a result, Europe's economic sanctions have created a global domino effect. Both developed and emerging economies quickly deployed defense strategies against Trump's protectionist policies. The global economy was shaken by a wave of protectionism. Let's now take a more detailed look at how Europe's retaliation has affected not only its domestic markets, but also world trade. This section contains important details on the scope of the European Union's retaliation strategy and its potential impact on future trade relations. The European Commission, in conducting the trade policy of its 27 member states, announced that the United States tariffs will not be limited to metals, but will instead apply to a wider range of products, such as leather goods, plastics, and household appliances. This will affect many different sectors, not only industrial metals, but also agricultural products. Agricultural products, such as poultry, beef, seafood, nuts, sugar, and vegetables, will also be targeted for retaliation. United States President Donald Trump has defended his tariffs, arguing that they will boost the American manufacturing sector and protect local jobs. But European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen warned that these policies could cause economic hardship on both sides of the Atlantic. Jobs are at stake. Prices will rise in Europe and in the United States. Tariffs are taxes. They are bad for business, and they are even worse for consumers. These tariffs disrupt supply chains. They bring uncertainty for the economy. European steelmakers warned that the tariffs could have serious consequences. Henrik Adam, president of the European Steel Association Eurofair, said in February that the industry could lose up to 3.7 million tons of exports to the United States. It will worsen the situation of the European steel industry and exacerbate an already terrible market environment, he said. The United States accounts for about 16% of the European Union's total steel exports, making it the second largest export destination. Trump had previously imposed steel and aluminum tariffs on the European Union during his first term, sparking a series of countermeasures targeting United States products such as motorcycles, bourbon, peanut butter, and jeans. The European Union estimates that the annual trade volume between the two sides is about $1.5 trillion, accounting for about 30% of global trade. The European Union argues that while it runs a trade surplus in goods, the United States has an advantage in services. According to the European Commission, trade in goods between the European Union and the United States reached $851 billion in 2023, with the European Union running a surplus of $156 billion. Meanwhile, trade in services amounted to $688 billion, and the European Union is expected to run a deficit of $104 billion. However, with increased trade restrictions from both sides, businesses and consumers in both economies could face higher costs and increased uncertainty. As the dispute unfolds, European officials will likely seek to coordinate with other major trading partners affected by United States tariffs. The World Trade Organization could become a forum to challenge the new measures, as previous trade disputes have led to legal battles between the United States and the European Union. For now, the tariffs will take effect in April, and businesses across sectors are bracing for possible disruptions to supply chains and increased costs for consumers on both sides of the Atlantic. All in all, the European Union's retaliation was a critical turning point that changed the course of the trade wars and profoundly affected the global economy. This strategic response was not only an economic reaction, but also a diplomatic show of force. The European Union's move has gone down in history as one of the most striking examples of the search for balance in global trade. But are trade wars an inevitable reality of the New World Order? Or can global leaders find a different path that emphasizes cooperation rather than confrontation? Do you think the European Union strategy was appropriate, or were Trump's policies a justified defensive reflex? Do not forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching us.